Hi, I'm Riley Carroll. This is our presentation for our leadership theory project over shared leadership. So, this is our introduction to our shared leadership model. Northouse describes this shared leadership, how it helps solve problems in a faster way and helps face less conflict. This is our textbook, and it allows us to understand the way of shared leadership and how it can contribute into our workforce and also our daily lives. Shared leadership is defined as a broadly sharing power and influence among a set of individuals, rather than centralizing it in the hands of a single individual who acts in the clear role of a dominant superior. So, this basically means that instead of having one person that's in charge and that is doing all of the leadership, it's a group. And so they're sharing the leadership roles among the group where it's not just one person that inserts dominance over the others. So this allows people to, especially in virtual situations, this allows people to collaborate and kind of see where there'll be less conflict because there's not as much people just saying, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. There's not as much ownership, and people take a lot more pride in their work when they're able to collaborate and make some of the decisions. This is a horizontal type of leadership, and it also can be vertical, but it is not where the CEO is in charge and then it goes down the ladder. It is more of a way where people can go around and be able to see where people can get into all different types of the project instead of just one person delegating, okay, you're in charge of this, you're in charge of this. It's more of a collaboration more than a just someone being the boss of other people. Some examples of this are churches. There can be a group of elders that decide things as a group instead of one person saying, okay, I need this, this, and this, and this. And because one person cannot know everything about the church or what the whole church would want as a group. So it's easier to get other people from that group and being able to collaborate and share what they would want to see instead of one person trying to figure out everything. This is also an example in healthcare, nurses specifically. I listened to a podcast where it was talking about healthcare and how shared leadership is in nurses because they take more ownership of their work because they get to make their own decisions. And one nurse usually would get medications wrong or wrong dosage, but having the nurses work together as a group allowed them to collaborate and see what the differences were and be able to spot the problem more easily. And patient care is a lot more valued when people can actually take ownership of their work and they be able to spot the problem easier when they know that this group was working on it. This is also used in Southwest Airlines. They use teams and incorporate servant service. So they allow the team to be able to understand what's going on and make sure that people's flights get on time and they're not just using a CEO to delegate tasks. Soldevo is a SaaS company, which means software as a service. They found out that their team did not respond well to CEOs. So they implemented an executive committee, which is just experts from different departments, and they allowed those experts to make the decisions where it's more of a group effort and it's not just one. And their workload and their team worked a lot better when they did not have a CEO. Instead of they had this executive committee, which allowed them to express their opinions to different people. I've had this in my experience with 4-H and FFA. I found that working on a officer team or even being president, I am allowed to collaborate with my other officers instead of just being a one-man band where I'm having to do it all by myself. This is also applied in top management teams, entrepreneurial teams, consulting teams, and management teams. And now Bethany will talk about the theorist.
Hi, my name is Bethany Medina, and this slide is discussing the theorists who are associated with the shared leadership theory. And the people who are associated with this are going to be Craig L. Pierce, who is a professor of management at the Peter Drucker School of Management. And he co-wrote this book with J.A. Conger, who is a senior research scientist at the Claremont McKenna College in LA, and he also teaches leadership styles. Both these men wrote the book Shared Leadership, Refining the Hows and Whys of Leadership. This book talks about what the theory is, how it's applied, who uses it, who can use it, and just allows people to see the different type of leaderships that can be used rather than traditional leaderships such as CEOs and just one person and being in charge. Next are the diagrams that can be used. So I found an article written by Julia Kuzmina who shared these diagrams on what she believes shared leadership to be after reading the book and experiencing it for herself in her life. Um, These diagrams, the first one is her interpretation of shared leadership, how it's a group of people at the top rather than just one person controlling the environment. And then the next diagram shows the difference between vertical leadership, which is also traditional leadership, where it's one person in charge, one person commanding everyone, one person doing everything or trying to control everything. And it's compared to shared leadership, which is pictured as a box because everyone has shared responsibility and equal treatment of each other. Um, Her article was very interesting because it shared tips on how to implement it, why she thinks it works the best, and um, just different diagrams. This is one of about, I want to say, five that she shared and created. And it just is very eye-opening to see how they can be used and implemented rather than traditional sense and how it differs. And ending that, we're going to move on to the next slide.
Hi, I am Elise Hughes, and I will be discussing strengths of shared leadership. And so some of the strengths of a shared leadership process is that it ultimately leads to better performance for a team and an increased team effectiveness. And this is demonstrated through because of the theory focuses on real life organizational work. You can apply it immediately to your organization, to your company. And so it has a direct outcome. And then, and anywhere that leadership exists, any sort of structure, you can take some of those shared leadership models and apply it to that. It also is able to help diagnose and correct problems within the team. Um, when leadership is shared amongst the different coworkers or amongst team members, we get to see that different people have different strengths and weaknesses, and it just broadens that horizon and it allows people to step up and to just so the company knows like how things are going a bit better, and so then you can more easily correct and fix problems amongst the team. Shared leadership is also really practical. It can be integrated pretty easily into most companies, not necessarily all, but into most. And a benefit of the shared leadership theory is that it is taking into account the current culture and the current movement that companies are already on, with trying to develop leadership programs, move people amongst the companies up ranks, and create more opportunities. It follows that model and it's keeping it up with it. It also offers helpful guidelines on how it can be integrated and how like things can be shared and it can be a little bit more inclusive. And so it takes away some of the hardship that comes from having to really think about each and every step. Shared leadership, another strength of shared leadership is that it also does promote leadership development. You're empowering individuals by challenging them to step up or including them on having a voice and getting to take some ownership. And it also is tapping into their diverse strengths. So now you might have somebody who is an engineer who also has experience with graphic design, and they get to help lead this program management project instead of just stick in their lane. But then you have some more creativity that comes with that. Also, another strength of shared leadership is stronger relationships and trust amongst teams, amongst companies, and amongst organizations. This just helps everybody to see a bit more of what people are doing and to feel committed and encouraged to their teams, which leads to those stronger relationships, and you're getting to know coworkers better and just more trust amongst them. Also, shared leadership, those things are developed through an increase in encouragement of innovation. When you have more eyes working on things, when you have more people playing to their strengths or getting to see new opportunities, there's a tendency to just be able to think bigger and wider than when there's just one brain attached. That's why we have 4 people working on one project instead of one. And so that also allows for increased innovation and flexibility and adaptability, which continues to keep those stronger relationships. Shared leadership also naturally encourages a lot of collaboration, which is another benefit and can lead to less conflict and more consensus amongst the team, building better cohesion, building a better work culture or organizational culture, and allowing and creating stronger relationships and building company trust. It also is a sustainable model. It's making it so leadership is kind of split. More people are empowered into it, and so it's sustainable versus like there's only ever a CEO. Now we have an executive suite. Now we have more people who are working, and it's easier to integrate new people into that, and it also just makes it a little bit more sustainable. So moving on into criticisms and weaknesses. Some weaknesses of the shared leadership theory are it might not and does not work in all cultures. I hinted on that earlier. While it can be integrated easily and while it is a pretty effective model, not all teams are able to adapt well to it. It does require a high team maturity rate. So you can't necessarily have people who are fresh out of college or this is their first job or are completely new to the team or new to their job to be able to adapt to that model if it's something that's never been done or that they've been a part of before. And then it's not always a great fit in the sense that it's really hard to do this within a hierarchical organization. We talked about our horizontal model. When the model can't be flipped to be a horizontal type of leadership, it's really hard to implement shared leadership theories. And then this model of shared leadership does involve risk and courage. You're asking team members to do something that might not be within their job title, and not everybody is willing or can afford to take that step forward. They might not, they might have some lack of distrust, or they might just be overwhelmed with their current job, or have things outside that's not a risk that they're willing to take. That's not feedback or not something they're open to. And then it is potentially outside the formal role, which leads and goes along with the role confusion and the lack of with the role confusion. Sometimes that can just bring up conversations and frustrations amongst team members who feel like they're having to do somebody else's job. And then shared leadership theory lacks clarity. It gives a good descriptive, but is not prescriptive. And so when you're looking at a model of leadership and you're wanting to know, I need to do this when this situation comes up, that's not necessarily what you're going to get within a shared leadership theory. And then it can be kind of time consuming to adjust and change in companies or an organization to a shared leadership theory. So there is a bit of an adjustment period, and it does make decision making longer while people are kind of getting integrated. Instead, like I said earlier, instead of having one person making decisions, you might now have a team of 5, and that'll just take longer for everyone's opinions to be heard, for consensus to be met. And so it's not always the best fit because of those situations. There's also currently no ways to really fully measure and evaluate how effective shared leadership is. We get to do that on a person basis, but data is a little bit hard to track with. And then it can lack accountability in the sense of people really stepping up and following through when the leadership is shared. People might just think that other people will step up or somebody else has got this, and then it can lack overall, accountability, and things can slip through the cracks a bit more than when it's exactly what is prescribed in their job description. So we're going to move on to the next one.
Hi, it's me again. So connecting to what Elise said, there aren't many ways that you can measure and assess how helpful it is, but there are ways and ways teams and management facilities can implement aids to help implement shared leadership into their work environment. Some aids were very difficult to find, I'm going to be honest. They weren't easy to find because they're usually in textbooks or they're in long educational articles, and I did look at those articles and read them. Some aids I found that can be accessed very easily by the general public is this questionnaire by the National Collaborating Center for Methods and Tools. And what they do is they have a sort of PDF file in which there are many self-assessment exercises in which they provide little tests that you can rank yourself on. And I provided two examples. They can't be seen well, but one of them is on building trust, and one is like assessing the environment in which they'll be working in. I think these aids and assessments are very helpful for a person to get a look into how they work and their own work ethic and how they would work in a system like this. Because like Elise said, some people have to be held accountable. Some people don't work well in situations like that and rather instead need someone to give them instructions rather than creating extra instructions for themselves. Another thing I found was an article. This article discussed the benefits of shared leadership and provided ways to establish this theory in a workplace. Um, it was provided by Indeed, and I think it was very helpful because Indeed is where you go for like um, applying for jobs, trying to find places where you can grow your career and connect with others who are also looking for the same career. And so I think an article posted by Indeed would be very helpful, but I think my opinion is that the assessments are someone's best bet at trying to implement it themselves, or if companies want to test how their teams might like it rather than just saying, "Oh, we're now going to be a shared leadership team rather than me giving instruction to you." And so aids, they are difficult to come by, but they are out there, and some of these are the ones that I found. And we're going to move on now.
Howdy, my name is Alyssa Liu, and I'm going over the application of shared leadership. And so I chose shared leadership at Texas A&M University in the Student Government Association. And so Texas A&M University is known for its strong leadership culture, and one of the best examples of shared leadership within the institution is the Student Government Association, or short for SGA. And the Student Government Association operates under a shared leadership model where students from different backgrounds collaborate to make decisions, implement initiatives, and represent the student body. Um, Texas A&M has always been known for developing strong leaders, and the SGA is a perfect example of how leadership can be distributed, inclusive, and empowering for all students. And you can just see in like these images here of like how collaborative it is, and everyone has like different contributions to it, and they're all working towards a common goal. And like there's people from different backgrounds all just working towards like a common shared goal. And then moving on, So these are aspects of shared leadership in Texas A&M Student Government Association. So the first one would be distributed leadership roles. So instead of a single leader making all decisions, the SGA has multiple branches, so executive, legislative, and judicial, each with leaders responsible for different aspects of student governance. These leaders work together, ensuring diverse perspectives, contributing to decision making. And so the SGA is made up of three branches: executive, legislative, and judicial, just like our national government. And each branch has different responsibilities and leaders who work together to represent the student body. For example, while the executive branch may focus on student outreach or event planning, the legislative branch might handle budgets and policy decisions, and then the judicial branch ensures fairness and upholds rules. And so this division of leadership roles allows more voices to be heard and encourages diverse perspectives in every decision made. And then secondly, there's collaborative decision making and there's also empowering student leaders. So for collaborative decision making, there's policies and initiatives such as funding student organizations or planning large campus events like the big event are developed collectively by student representatives. No single person has absolute authority and leadership is shared across multiple committees. And then empowering student leaders, students from various colleges and organizations within Texas A&M can take leadership roles within the SGA, allowing for broader representation and engagement. This structure encourages undergraduates and graduates to take initiative and develop leadership roles. Um, and so for collaboration and empowerment, shared leadership also shows up in how SGA makes big decisions. And so, for example, when it comes to like big events like the big event, which is one of the largest student-run service projects in the country, or like allocating funds to student organizations, no single person makes the final call. Instead, committees work together, discuss proposals, and vote on the best way moving forward. And so this collaborative process empowers students across campus from different colleges, backgrounds, and even graduate and undergraduate programs to get involved and take initiative. And then lastly, there's adaptability, inclusion, and mentorship. And so for adaptability and inclusion, it's because leadership responsibilities are distributed among different committees and individuals. And so the Student Government Association can quickly respond to student concerns, campus issues, and external challenges such as policy changes or emergency situations. And then for mentorship and development, senior leaders can mentor younger students, ensuring continuity in leadership. And so this shared leadership approach helps prepare students for future leadership roles and professional settings while also strengthening the Aggie network. And so for adaptability, since the leadership is spread out among different people and different groups, the SGA can respond quickly to student concerns or urgent campus issues, whether that's a policy changes or unexpected challenges. And it also promotes inclusion because students from all areas of the university can bring in new ideas and represent their communities. Um, and then lastly, which is like one of my favorite parts, is mentorship. So like older student leaders can often like mentor new members, teaching them the ropes and then helping them grow. And this not only builds strong teams, but also prepares students to be leaders even after college. And so by using the shared leadership model, the Texas A&M Student Government Association ensures that decision making is inclusive, democratic, and responsible to student needs while also reflecting some of the university's core values of leadership, respect, and selfless service. So in conclusion, Texas A&M Student Government Association is a shining example of how shared leadership can benefit an organization, and it also helps ensure decisions that are inclusive, democratic, and effective, while also empowering students to step into leadership roles and serve others. And so this model doesn't just make the Student Government Association stronger, but it also reflects Texas A&M's core values of leadership, respect, and selfless service. And then, yeah, and thank you so much. And then the next slide is just our references of everything.